How's that app working for you? This is a question I can ask a lot of people on a daily basis, and it's based on the fact that a lot of people come to me asking me questions. They see me, talking about this app or that app over the years. Many of you have seen me switch from one app to another, and every time I do, people will ask me, of course, they'll want to know what made me switch. They'll want to know, does this replace the other app you were using, and so on and so forth. And the answer is not always as straightforward as you think. In fact, usually when I first switch to something, the answer is not, no, I'm not completely replacing something. It's more, I'm testing something out. I might be moving some processes over to the new app. And for example, this last go around when I completely switched to Notion was not my original intention. I was going to use Notion essentially for note taking and keeping track of, digital notes. But the more I learned about how to use it, and the more I learned how flexible it was and how you could really sort of customize it to, and the way I like to describe it is I could bend it to my will to get it to do the things I needed to do. But most importantly, I could design it so that everything I need is right here at my fingertips. In other words, as I mentioned in the write-up for this, optimized for retrieval. Right? A lot of us have very inefficient systems because we're optimizing for transmissions. We just want to get something off our plate. So somebody asks us a question, we write it up in an email, shoot it off, and then good luck finding that in 6 months from now when somebody comes back to you and says, hey, remember that email you sent me with such and such? You might not even remember unless they specifically asked you about the fact that it was an email you sent. You might not even remember that you sent it in an email, right? So the point is, it usually takes a little bit of work up front to set things up in a way that that they're optimized for retrieval, meaning 6 months later when I have zero independent recollection of where it is, I can still find it in 30 seconds or less because I have a system. And that brings up the next mistake that I believe a lot of us make in terms of choosing an app, which is we often choose an app based on the fact that, we keep hearing about it. And we keep hearing, oh, everybody's using this new app. We got to get on that app. We got to use that app. That must be the thing. That must be the reason we're having trouble keeping up, is because we're not using this app that everyone else seems to be using right now. And we don't really even stop to consider what problem or problems we're trying to solve with said app. And that kind of underscores the point. What I really think is underlies the issue behind why so many people, with all these apps and tools around and available, many of them with tons of overlap, many of them do a lot of the same things. Some do certain things better, others do other things better. But bottom line, there are no shortage of tools to help us, track and manage everything we need to do and do it efficiently. So what could be the problem, right? The problem, as I see it, is that it's not the app. It's the lack of a system for how you're using the app. And that's where I spent a lot of time recently, again, drilling through David Allen's Getting Things Done. And then while I was in that process, I got an email from Jay Abraham talking about a book by a guy named Nick Sonnenberg called Come Up for Air. And between the two of those, I started really reading, and that, between studying those two books, coupled with the fact that I was really, I had an explosion in terms of how I was learning all the things Notion could do and all the ways, like I said, I can get it to, bend it to my will, and how it's not a linear system. It's very much a geometric system when you learn how to use it properly. Between those three elements, the two books and Notion, I had kind of an explosion in my mind in terms of how to create a system, or I want to be very careful with my words, not how to create a system. The system is what you should be able to define completely devoid of any app. That's what Getting Things Done gives you. And Nick Sonnenberg gives you the kind of framework for it. So the app and the system have to be seen as two separate things. So what I want to do is kind of walk you through real quick how I've set my system up in Notion to be modeled after the whole Getting Things Done method, right? What you're seeing on my screen here is my main firm page, right? So this is just a dashboard, if you will, of things that I want access to, easily and quickly throughout the day. Another book I studied years ago called The 1 Minute Millionaire tells you how millionaires think 1 minute to the next, and it explains how they break their life up into these 6 major areas: body, mind, and spirit, time, people, and money. So these are high-level links I have here. This is just really kind of like reminders for myself about being productive, for the money part, the work-related part of things. But let me get actually directly into the system here. So first of all, in this very article, I referenced a video that I did on Microsoft Edge and why I switched to that. I want to show you just first and foremost as kind of an example of how beautifully the system works and talk about optimized for retrieval. So I'm going to go here. I'm actually already in my projects under my global firm views, and I'm going to call up my project for content, which brings this up here. I go into here, and I'm going to now call up Edge. So you see how quickly this was published July of 2023, almost a year ago. And you saw how quickly I just pulled it up. I click in here, and there's my article URL, the short URL, the YouTube URL, which is what I'm going to use for purposes of this post on LinkedIn. So that's an example of what I mean when I talk about optimized for retrieval. It's been a year since I published that article, and I found it in less than 10 seconds. Right? Now let me go into my client's dashboard here. And I'm just going to use my own firm as the example. Of course, I set up my own firm as though I were a client of my own, and that's where and how I track and manage everything I need to do. Right? And so here's my task, and really what I want to show you here goes back to what I outlined for you in the write-up. If I show you the statuses, and I've defined different views to carve up, the tasks that I've identified different ways, right? But mainly what I want to show you here is exactly how I took the system from getting things done and then built Notion to incorporate the system. In other words, they're two separate things, but here's how you bring them together. And again, the key point is I have to understand the system first, then I can choose the app, and I'll basically learn how to use the app to get it to conform to my system. Most of people that I've talked to when they come to me for help with this kind of thing, what I find out pretty quickly is you're doing it backwards. You're getting the app and you think the app is the system, and now you're trying to just figure out how to make the app the system, but you don't really have a system defined, right? So now we have a system defined, and this is really the backbone of the whole thing right here, is I have my tasks, right? And then here are my statuses, and you'll note my statuses follow exactly or very closely to that list of stuff that I showed you under the organize part. Remember, it's capture, clarify, organize, reflect, and engage, right? So under the organize part, that's where something goes from the inbox to scheduled or in progress. There's next action items, on hold, maybe someday, reference, done, or archive. The only reason I make a distinction between done and archive is it's initially when I finish something, I'll mark it done, and the done status is configured to still show up, because oftentimes right after I've completed it, I'm probably going to send an email to the client or a Slack message, and I'm going to have to discuss it with them. They'll have questions, so I still want it available. I want it available for reference purposes, but it's not going to permanently be referenced. Once I know I've kind of resolved everything and finished it to the client's satisfaction, then it's going to get archived. So that's really the distinction. And reference, by contrast, is something that, for whatever reason, I don't need to do anything about it. I'm not aware of any immediate follow-up I'll need to do, but it does have information in it that I want to be able to reference. So you get the idea, right? So the statuses here and how I assign them to my tasks are exactly how I am able to take David Allen's Getting Things Done method and use it in my whole system in Notion. That, in a nutshell, is how I've implemented it. And as I've said, it doesn't mean you have to use Notion. I would love for you to use Notion because I think it's amazing. And as I've mentioned, I have a whole course that teaches you and actually gives you this template so that you can just take whatever information you have and need to get set up and start tracking and plug it into my system. It's all kind of set up and built for you. All you have to do is watch my videos to learn how to start using it. So if you don't feel like your app is going to help, or you just hate the app, because bottom line, like I said earlier, and I mentioned this in the write-up, one of the keys to this is the reflect part, which means I'm going to spend a lot of time in this reflecting, checking up on it, making sure that, looking into my next action items, for example, on practically a daily basis to see, is there something in here that I need to get scheduled and move it over because maybe now the time has come where I need to get the thing done, right? So that's the reflect part. I'm in here every day, all day, constantly checking things. And certainly once a week, I've got specific time set aside where I'm just going to do a big picture review of everything and get things organized. And again, the beauty of Notion is I have so many different tools here that I can use. Like you're looking at a simple list view, but here's like a week view, of the same stuff. And here's a monthly calendar. It all taps into the same information, just gives me different ways of looking at it so I can interact with it, so I can reflect and organize things very quickly and easy. Okay, now I'm done. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. 10 minutes worth on how's that app working for you. Of course, you know where to find me if you have any questions at all on anything I've covered here.